You should.
We'll start with London Marathon and then talk cross country, but we really want to get in the world athletics rankings because people were very upset about the final world athletics rankings for 2021. I know that they were circulated at least the top 10, but everybody is ranked here on these on these rankings, so we can go through that a bit later. Let's start with the London Marathon recap, though. I know you watched probably the whole 3 hour and 40-minute watch party that Cathal and I did during the show or during the race. Woke up at 2:30 yesterday to record that, Gordon. So first of all, I just wanted to thank you for offering feedback, watching all of it. You were thinking, man, at an hour 27, a little low energy, Kevin. Maybe next time, pick that up. But it was fun. If people want to go relive it, you could go watch it. 3 hours and 40 minutes. Me and Cathal talking. He told some good stories. Good time.
Or you can listen to it on Spotify
True.
or anywhere where you get your podcasts.
Put it at
Let's relive
1.5x, and then it's not three
relive
hours
the
and 40
marathon.
minutes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, it's a fun race though. We have the deepest, we can say the deepest women's race in history. So you had 5 women under 218. That's never happened before. Jocelyn Jepkosgei wins, and she was one of the favorites going in just because she had this great buildup. Didn't have to run the Olympics, which turned out to actually be a blessing for her here. Really turned it on that second half. Dropped a 4:56 mile late in the race and ran away with it. So she's now won 2 world marathon majors. She's got second in another fast race in Valencia. So her marathon career is off to a real good start. But as expected, Gordon, top to bottom, this was fast. Bridget Kosgei wasn't in that main breakaway, but still held her own to finish fourth, less than a minute back in 2:18:40. Salpeter, who had came in with a 2:17 PB, she was fifth in 2:18:54. So we had a top five of Jep Kosgei, Ezemeru, Bakary, Kosgei, and Salpeter, and the field produced. I mean, there were 12 women there for a while who were clicking along at that 2:17, 2:18 pace, and we thought basically only half of them need to stay together on this, and then we're going to get the deepest race in history. And that's pretty much how it transpired. Some people fell off on the back, but there was enough depth up there to produce this great race.
Yeah, and do you think Jepkoskai's win is going to be the start of us recognizing that the runners with the most advantage here are going to be those who did not run in the Olympics?
You're talking about for the fall season. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a great point. That's a great point as we move on to Boston, Chicago, and New York. Now, New York, I think, is far enough away to where it
yeah,
would be a different conversation. And New York is going to have Perez Jepchirchir in the women's field, the gold medalist from Sapporo. So yeah, that was the theme, right? That was the theme in the on the women's side of things was the women who competed at the Olympics did not fare as well as the ones who did. But I also think what we're getting here too is a real interesting women's field shaking out because you got to consider Jip Kosgei one of the best. Kosgei not willing to write off just because she had to turn around so quickly and run this race. And then you have Jip Cheer, who, if she goes Olympics and then wins New York, you'd have to consider her one of the best. I think we're heading to a 2022, perhaps, where we have three titans in women's marathoning internationally.
yeah, and they'll be good. And we got to find a way to get all three of them at the same race because we couldn't even get that at the Olympics, right? It's wild
Right.
that you can run 2:17, win the London Marathon, and you weren't seen by your governing body of your country as like, yeah, we want you to represent our country at the Olympics. Why wasn't she selected to be at the Olympics? Jip Koskai.
Well, you're not going to leave off Bridget Kosgei, world record holder,
Yeah.
and she had this streak of wins in London and Chicago. Jep Cheer, solid. Obviously, she wins a gold medal. That's justified. The third was Ruth Chepnegich, who didn't run well at the Olympics, but remember, she had won the world championships in Doha, and she had put up fast times as well too. So there wasn't really a reason to leave any of those three off. Combine that with the fact that Jocelyn Jepkosgei had only run 2 marathons and only had one win, and that was a reason. I just think she hadn't established herself enough as a marathon star yet to be put on that team. Now, Athletics Kenya and a lot of other federations who select teams and don't use trials, they get it wrong a lot. They get it wrong a lot. They make bad picks. I don't think this was one of them. I just think this was a case where She didn't have the resume quite like the other women did, but that's not going to happen again. Now we know exactly who she is and how good she is.
Yeah. And maybe it's a blessing in disguise, right?
Oh,
There's
100%.
always the next year's Olympics. It gives you kind of a competitive advantage in this fall season. You get your first major. Is this her first major win? It's her first major
New
win,
York.
right?
New York.
Oh,
In New
she
York.
won in New York as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she won on a fast course in London. First London win.
Yep.
Like that's just gonna skyrocket you. Now you have even a faster PB. You're gonna be rolling through the next few years in the marathon cycles. So hey, not everything is about the Olympics, which we will get to when we talk about these World Athletic rankings. Um, and I think that showed in the marathon here. So she's set to go on a pretty good run these next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. And London, remember, next year is going to still stay in the fall.
Yeah.
So there'll be a crowded fall schedule again. The question is, well, what do they do in the spring? Because now Koskai would be fully rested. Chip again, if she wins in New York, we consider her in that big three. So do they all meet in the spring? If so, where do they meet? Or maybe they meet that late winter season there. We've seen more people trying to get in 3 marathons a year as opposed to two. It's a really exciting time in women's marathoning, and not just because the times, but because of the figures involved. Again, Jeb Kosgei, 2:17:43, big PR. Azamiro also under 2:18 with a 2:17:58, and then Bikere 2:18:18. It was just PRs across the board there. Bridget Kosgei didn't get a PB, but I'm going to give her a pass on that because when your PB is 2:14, you need everything to be completely perfect, not just with your shape, but with the course and the weather and everything. The weather cooperated, and they ran well. It was a funny situation, Gordon. Uh, they had a 2:17 pace group and a 2:18 pace group, but the 2:17 pacers, nobody followed them. So all of the work fell onto the shoulders of the 2:18 pacer, and there was only one 2:18 pacer, and there was three 2:17 pacers, and they never really adjusted. It was funny to watch, but the 2:18 pacer did a spectacular job of doing a little bit more than expected because she's carrying basically 10, 11 women in that group for a long time, and then she had them under 27 or sorry under 2:18 pace for a little bit by the time she stepped off. And then Jeff Koskei was allowed to take over at that point. And there was a little bit of time there where you thought when the projection was hovering around 2:17:30, man, can she get Mary Katani's London course record, which is also the women's only record? And she wasn't able to do it. She drifted back a little bit. But I think maybe if they had even more help in the beginning, that could have been a possibility. She was really strong in the second half. As I mentioned, she had that 4:56 mile late in the race, but I think there's more there for Jep Kosgei. I'm not going to say, hey, you can run 2:14 because only one woman's done that in history, but I could certainly see a 2:16 next year in London or Berlin or Valencia if the weather cooperates.